back and forth. As you've got questions, comments, concerns, please, put them in the comments or raise your hand, and would love to hear from you as well. So yeah, like Todd said, this is a company. Pearl actually started ingesting X-rays back in 2015, and so this company kind of spun out of a different company that was still in AI and computer vision, but in the marketing space. Now the CEO really saw the vision for where AI was going, and especially computer vision. His father being a dentist, he knew that with the amount of X-rays that are seen by dentists on a daily basis, he's like, you know what? This industry truly needs AI and computer vision to assist. So they started the process in 2015, and right before COVID, when they were going to be launching, that's kind of when they were going to come to market. COVID hit. They then focused on regulatory approvals, on FDA clearances, seeing as where this was going, and especially because AI and what we do, and I'll explain this here in a little bit, but because it is a disease detection device, it has to be FDA cleared, has to be FDA approved, especially to be shown patient facing. So we started that process, and we were the very first company to have FDA clearance on disease detection, on caries, in March of last year. So from there till now, it's been exciting to see how things have grown, how things have changed and evolved and continue to improve. And so would love to kind of get into that a little bit here. The first question I've got, and if you've got comments or thoughts on this, please chime in, but what is AI? I say that because everyone hears AI and it's like, okay, it's computers. It's, and there's a lot of things that people say, oh, this is artificial intelligence, or it's AI, where it's really not. So what is AI? If anybody has questions or thoughts on this, if you want to go ahead and put it into the comments. Todd, I don't know if anyone's responding, but who can answer this? What is AI?
ChatGPT.
What is artificial intelligence? Yeah,
Somebody
ChatGPT.
That's what they said.
Okay. And if you have not played around with ChatGPT, I'm telling you, you will go down a rabbit hole. My first time playing around with ChatGPT, man, I was up all night. I'm putting in questions and comments, and we'll talk about ChatGPT here in just a second too. But artificial intelligence. So to kind of give you a little background of what AI is, this movie, I don't know if anyone's ever seen this movie, The Imitation Game. Fascinating movie. I love this movie. So this movie truly is kind of the background and the history behind AI. So Alan Turing, this brilliant mind back around World War II, created a machine, created a computer to help decipher and to help break the Nazi code. And in the end, he was basically credited, and it didn't come out until later, but he was basically credited for helping the Allies win World War II, because he created all of the algorithms and everything to go in to help break this almost impossible code that the Nazis used between submarines and airplanes. And in fact, this computer is what that looked like. It takes up like a whole room. And so we look at this and how far computers have come from that time. But there was really something that caught my eye and was really interesting that Alan said clear back in 1951. He said, "It is customary to offer a grain of comfort in the form of a statement that some peculiarly human characteristic could never be imitated by a machine." And then he goes on to say, "I cannot offer any such comfort, for I believe that no such bounds can be set." Now, truly a man before his time, seeing the power of computers, the power of where this technology could take things. We fast forward from 1950 to today, and we see how far computers have come and what ChatGPT is doing and where AI is going. Man, he really saw into the future there. This image right here, Todd, do you know what this is an image of? This picture?
I was thinking like it's NASA or something. I don't know.
Yes, exactly. So this picture right here, I like this because it really kind of puts things into perspective as well. you're looking at all of the computers that it took to send a man to the moon. Okay, this was a room this is NASA. And basically, all of these computers were utilized to send a man to the moon. And all of this computing power that you see on this picture, and I know my computer's a little blurry in the background, but all of that computing power can fit on this iWatch today. That's how far we've come. You know, the computing power to send a man to the moon can now all fit on my Apple iWatch. So we truly have come far. It truly is continuing to advance. So to answer that question of what AI is, this is probably the best way to put this: computer systems that can simulate the problem solving and decision making capabilities of the human mind. Okay. Now, a couple different things that I want to just differentiate. There is the term artificial intelligence. So this term, artificial intelligence, was coined clear back in the 1950s with Alan Turing, which is the ability for computers to solve very intricate problems. Okay, then we go into machine learning, where now computers have the ability to improve upon itself. Then we go into deep learning, where not only are the computers able to improve upon the data that is inputted, okay, and solve very complex problems, but now with this term deep learning, which came in 2010, deep learning truly is where that computers can now step into kind of that human characteristic of decision making. So now computers can solve the problems, improve upon itself, and make decisions based upon the data that is put into it. Okay. Now, the best example I can give probably of artificial intelligence is on your iPhone. Now, I know it's on the Android. I'm going to give you the example of how this works on the iPhone. Okay. And in fact, you can follow along as well. So if you've got your phones with you, go ahead and pull them out. And I want you to find the Photos app. It kind of looks like this little colorful flower wheel thing. So go to the Photos app and click on that. And it's going to pop up all your photos. And in the bottom right-hand side, there's going to be like a little search bar, like a little magnifying glass. And I want you to click on that. Okay. Now, in doing so, it pulls up this search bar at the top. And I want you to just type in something fairly generic. So type in like dog or cat or something. Now, for the example that I'm going to give, I type in the word dog. All right. And as I do that, instantaneously, it pulls up every picture in my phone that has a dog. Now, I did not tag these pictures. I didn't go in and tag every one of these pictures with a dog, but it was able to, with artificial intelligence, break this down pixel by pixel and say, we are predicting, we are detecting that there is a high likelihood that there is a dog in this picture. Okay, now I've got like 328 pictures in here that are dogs, and you can see I've got 21 that are hound dogs, and 3 that are poodle dogs, and 2 that are hot dogs. Okay, but what's also interesting is the fact that as I went through and looked at all these pictures, I've got 3 or 4 pictures in there that are deer. So it got it pretty dang close. And when I look at those pictures, I can see why the computer would have thought that it was a dog, where in fact it was a deer. I can see that, but it's like it got me pretty close. All right. So what I will say with that caveat is that computers and artificial intelligence, it's not going to be 100% perfect, at least yet. Now, it's still going to continue to improve. If I go into those pictures and if I correct that and I change that to say, well, this is a deer, and if I do that to the next picture and say, this one's a deer too, as I continue to make those improvements, the computer or the iPhone and the AI will learn, will improve, and the next time that I do the search, the accuracy will increase. Okay. The next example I want to give is in that same search bar. I wanted to see if it could actually pull up individual people, face recognition. So I typed in my wife's name. Okay. Typed in my wife's name. Now, luckily, I've got a lot more pictures of my wife than I do my dogs. I got 328 pictures of my dogs. I got like almost 3,200, probably a lot more now of my wife, Carly. But what was interesting, and what I want to draw your attention to, is the image or the picture in the very top middle part. Okay, it's silhouettes, it's shades. I could barely see it. In fact, when this picture came up, I was like, "Oh, wait a second, it messed up." But then I looked closer, and the little silhouette that you see on the left hand side, that's my wife. I couldn't see it right off the bat. This is when we were in Tahiti, and because of the lighting, all you can see is the silhouette. That was kind of the moment where I was like, wow, how accurate this is. I didn't tag this picture, but just from the silhouette, it was able to determine that there's a high likelihood that Carly is in this picture. Okay. Now, the reason, and kind of as you back up a little bit, computers have the ability to see and to break down pixel by pixel and detect things that might be difficult for the human eye to see, right? Now, the very first time that AI was almost forced into the world as a necessity was around 9/11. Okay. Now, I remember the days when my father, growing up, my father traveled a lot. And I remember when my dad was coming home from the airport or coming home from a trip, we would go to the airport. And in fact, there was no security. You could walk right up to the gate. And we would always kind of look down the jetway to see if, my dad, as he's getting off the plane, could see him walking down the tunnel. Like that's how it was. 9/11 hit. And now all of a sudden we had the necessity to screen thousands of travelers on a daily basis. This was a massive problem. Massive problem. How are we going to do that? So when this was first kind of put into motion, when AI and computer vision and image detection with especially with x-rays was needed and almost mandated overnight, was with 9/11, where if you remember when these machines came out, you stand, you put your arms up, um, and it does the little scan. I'm always curious to be like, okay, who's in the back room looking at these x-rays, right? But in fact, back when these machines came out, I don't know if you remember, there was a lot of uproar because it was privacy issues, and they really had people that were looking at these x-rays and having to screen them as they did x-rays of hundreds of passengers every day. There were people that were actually having to look at these x-rays and scan and make sure there was no metal on the individuals. So you can see the problems. I mean, I this right here, you think, oh, it's an x-ray, but man, it's pretty revealing. Now, what's interesting, if you look at the picture on the left, no, not the smiley face, but you look at those two little boxes. This is an example of how AI and computer vision really came into play, where it was detecting things that were metal on the person. Now, what it's not saying is it's not saying, hey, there is a gun or a bomb on this person. It's saying we are suggesting that you search the individual here. There's a high likelihood that there's something that should not be there right here in this box, in this little detection box. So, and now with AI, it kind of has a cleaner version as you walk through. And I'm sure you've seen this. You walk through the scanners, and I'm always like, oh, crap, what did I forget in my pockets? Yep, there's my keys, or there's a stick of gum. And that's just it. It has a little box, and it's telling the TSA agent, hey, you should be checking or searching right here. Okay. Now, you translate that into healthcare, and where this is going into healthcare with AI. This is a stat that really kind of hit me hard. 2015, unfortunately, 2015 was the year that I lost my brother to cancer. I wouldn't say that it was due to misdiagnosis, but in 2015, 10% of US deaths were due to misdiagnosing illnesses or medical error. 10% in 2015, massive. And so you think about, okay, what could we have caught earlier? What could we have found earlier? Now, for myself, this really, really hit home for me last year. So last year, I want to introduce you to my wife. Okay, this is Carly, and as Todd said, I'm actually at a conference in Orlando, and my wife and my boys they're out at the pool somewhere right now. But this is Carly, and these are my two boys. So I got twin boys that are 5. Man, they're a handful. They're a lot of fun. So October of last year comes around, and Unfortunately, my wife felt a lump, and she, so we went to the oncologist, and they did a mammogram. Now she's 38 years old, so typically we wouldn't, necessarily need to be worried about this yet. We thought we had another 2 years before she needed to go in for a mammogram. She goes in for a mammogram, and October of last year, the doctor, the oncologist, looks at it and he says, "Hey, Mike and Carly, so there's obviously a lump. We feel something, but it's not typical to what we see with breast cancer. So I would recommend doing an ultrasound." Okay. Now, in my mind, I'm working at Pearl, at the time, at an AI company that looks at dental X-rays with AI, and I'm thinking, okay, so you can't see it with a mammogram. Sure, let's do the ultrasound. We do an ultrasound. It says, "Hey, Mike and Carly, um, what we see, there's something there. It's not typical to what we see with breast cancer." Now, we've done the two screenings. You've done a mammogram, you've done an ultrasound. So you could, if you wanted to, you could do a biopsy, or we can kind of just watch it. And as soon as he said that, we can watch it. I've been in the, I'm not a dentist, I will say. I've been in the dental space for the last 12 years, and I know what that means. And he says, we can watch it, see if anything changes next year. We could do another mammogram next year. Or if you do a biopsy, it'll be out of pocket. And I'm thinking, I don't care if it's out of pocket. I'm getting this thing checked. So they do a biopsy, and I'll never forget the call when they called back and they said, this is we did get the results back, and it's stage 2 invasive ductal carcinoma. That's when it hit me. That's when it hit me, and I'm thinking to myself, how and why? We have the technology today. We have the technology, and yet we are leaving so much up for human interpretation to look at these black and white and gray images. And to no disrespect to any doctors, any oncologists, any dentists out there, but there's a lot that is left up to human interpretation as we are looking at these black and white and gray images because, and I will say, not every mammogram is taken the same. Not every ultrasound is going to be taken the same. Not every dental x-ray is going to be taken the same. Lighting, contrast, angulation, everything plays into it. But I'm thinking, how is this even allowed? Now, the further that we got, and the more people that I talked to since then, okay, and here I'm going to show you. This is an image of the ultrasound there, of basically saying, yep, there's something there, not typical to breast cancer. I'm looking at this and I'm like, how would you know? With all the black and white images. Now, again, I'm not an oncologist, but this is when I went down a rabbit hole, and I started researching AI in oncology. I started researching AI in cancer and in x-rays and in mammograms and everything else. And I reached out to a CEO of a company over in France, actually, that is utilizing AI in oncology, and specifically with mammograms. And we got to talking, and he says, "Mike, it's unfortunate," but he says, and I'm not trying to scare anyone, but he says, unfortunately, especially in the United States, he's like, what we see is only about 6 or 7 out of 10 are caught on the mammogram. There's a lot that goes missed because there's so much that's left up to human interpretation and human error. So I found a case study as we were talking. He kind of showed me this case study. It was done in 2017, where he says AI improved breast cancer detection by 50%. Now, what they did is they had 14 oncologists, and they had them all review the same mammogram, okay? And 7 out of the 14 looked at the mammogram, and they said, yep, it looks like there's cancerous cells, looks like there's cancer probably in this area. And then they flipped the switch, and they turned on the AI assistance, and they gave it back to all 14 oncologists, the same oncologists, and they said, take just one more look. And when they did that, all 14 looked at it and said, oh, we see it now. Oh, yep, we agree. All 14 agreed with the AI assistance. I mean, that was mind-blowing, and I will never allow my daughters or anyone else to go to do a mammogram without artificial intelligence from this point forward. So now you're kind of wondering, okay, Todd, are we talking about dental? Are we talking about medical? Where's this going? I wanted to give a little background there, but here's the main point, and it all comes down to this. You're looking at a grayscale, okay? The human eye can only see and break down and differentiate between 30 and about 50 to 60 different shades and tones of gray. Now, computers and artificial intelligence have the ability to differentiate and to break down between 550 and 750 different shades and tones of gray. So now we're able to pick up things, early stage caries. We're able to detect things. We're able to see things that sometimes in our fast-paced daily lives go missed, unfortunately, or might be overlooked. Okay. Now we look at the path of technology in dentistry, and it wasn't even that long ago. Digital dentistry, right before the 2000s, implants, between the 50s and 75, and when AI really came in, it's like from this point forward, there's no telling where AI will go. And I've got a lot of art. That's one of the things that we do. Now, my background, I was early on at Solution Reach. I was early on at Dental Intelligence. I was early on at Weave. I started into the dental space, never thinking I'd be doing anything in dental, and I got hooked. I love the dental industry. I love the dental technologies, and I am fixated on how to create technologies to increase efficiencies in the dental practice, because there's only so much that we can do in a practice as far as efficiencies and how much we can do. And I truly feel like technology will be the only way that practices will be able to increase efficiency, allowing dental professionals to focus more on patient care. So as our days feel like they're getting jam-packed and we're fitting in more patients and we're doing more with those patients, how do we differentiate ourselves? How do we get the advantage over potential competition? How do we provide our patients with the best care? I truly feel like technology and leveraging technology is that path. There's only so much that two hands can do. There's only so much that an office manager or a treatment coordinator or a hygienist can do. But I truly believe that 1 + 1, dental professional plus technology, 1 + 1 truly equals 3. And there's a greater outcome when technology is leveraged. And at Pearl, we believe that AI will be an essential utility across the dental field within the next 5 to 7 years. It will be almost expected within the next 5 to 7 years. So there's a case study that I want to just review really quick. And Todd, if there's any comments or questions, please stop me at any time. But
one thing that just came up too is, are insurance companies using this now? And what kind of effect is that going to have? Maybe you're going to cover that, but that was something that popped up.
Great question. And I will get to that here.
Go ahead.
There's no doubt that insurance companies are looking at AI. At Pearl, I'm going to explain this in a little bit, how we've taken a different approach to create a tool that will be that's designed to be, dentist and practice focused, something that the dentist and the team can use, if anything, as additional backup and evidence for their claims that they're submitting. Okay. So though there's a lot of insurance companies that have maybe tried this route with various companies or solutions, I think that there's still a ways to go there. If anything, what I have seen is claims that are submitted with the backup and proof of artificial intelligence, we see a dramatic decrease in denials. Okay. There was a case study that was done by a group, the Dental AI Council. This is a group that kind of came together before COVID to really, kind of trudge the path of AI in dentistry. And they did a case study where they took 136 dentists and they had them all review the same FMX. Now they asked them to go in and to annotate and highlight what you see, what you're finding with the same FMX. They wanted to compare the results, but they also wanted to compare the treatment plans, whole mouth treatment plans for this one patient. Now the results, I want to highlight 2 examples here. Okay, so let's just take a look at this one here. And as you're looking here, as you're looking at this x-ray, our eyes, and depending on the practitioners and the clinicians that are looking at this, our eyes might gravitate and focus to certain things. Oh, maybe there's a fracture. Maybe there's caries or recurrent decay. Maybe not. So, I would ask, like, and you can put in the comments, what pops out to you with this X-ray? What pops out to you with just this tooth right here? What are you seeing? Caries, recurrent decay, fracture? I mean, what pops out? And you can go ahead and put it in the comments if you'd like.
What do you see, doctors?
And I'm gonna, yeah. What do you see? Granted, I know that the image, depending on how you're seeing this on your computers, contrast, everything else. I know that as our, as clinicians are looking at this, you might be using contrast and brightness and everything else, kind of adjust. But what do your eyes gravitate towards? So as you're kind of thinking through or maybe putting in the comments, I'm going to share the results. Okay. So out of the 136 dentists with this tooth number 3, 51.5% said that there were no caries present. You had 48.5% that said that there was. This was almost one of the biggest examples of like almost split right down the middle. You had 39.7% said that there was no recurrent decay, and 60.3% said that there was recurrent decay.
How many dentists was that, Mike?
136.
So it wasn't just a couple.
Wasn't just a couple. So this was one of the biggest examples of like almost split right down the middle. Now there's another example I want to give, but instead of what you see, okay, just taking tooth number 19, instead of what you see, this is where it gets interesting. What would the treatment plan be? What would the treatment plan for this tooth? What would the cost to restore, to treat this tooth? Would that be crown? Would it be a root canal? Would it be a filling? Would it be an implant? I mean, and this is interesting. I know it would be very different in a live audience. When I popped this up before, this is where I love to kind of sit back and just kind of hear people discuss. Now, I know that dentistry is like an art. I know that everyone practices, everyone treats differently. Everyone has different philosophies, different methodologies on how to treat. And that is totally fine. That's expected. Where it gets interesting is when you have an associate in the practice that might come up with a whole different treatment plan, present it to the patient. Patient goes home, talks to their spouse. After a couple of weeks, they're like, okay, I'm going to go back in, and they see somebody else, and they go to move forward with the treatment. They look at the treatment plan, and the doctor's like, actually, I would recommend doing something a little bit different. This happens quite often. And the problem we have with that is now the patient's like, okay, time out. Wait a second. There's things that like the other doctor didn't talk about. Why are we going this route? Or why are you suggesting this route? So trust does play into this a little bit, a lot of it. So
one thing,
I'm
Mike,
just going to share some of the results. What was that?
I was just going to say a lot of the doctors on here, and something we do a lot of Fortune is merger acquisitions, and we're acquiring doctors practices that are retiring, or maybe they're a little bit older, and we have our younger teams coming in, and it's really hard to get them to understand. Like, well, it's been like this for 20 years. Nobody ever told me that. It's just something that
exactly.
Sorry, I just kind of really thought about that. Never really put it
together.
No,
exactly. And that we see that a lot. We see it a lot where practices that are looking to acquire, or you're looking to acquire another practice, and they want to analyze their set of X-rays. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. On how AI is able to do that. Sharing the results for tooth number 19. What was interesting here is 26% said, yeah, to treat that would be between $0 and $500. And you had about 37% said, yeah, it's probably up to $1,000. You had 21% said up to $3,000. And then you had 16% say, yeah, between $3,000 and $5,000. So this is one that gets really interesting, especially as people are like, well, I would treat it like this. And, oh, I see that, but I might recommend this. So at the end of the day, you had whole mouth treatment plans for this one FMX with 136 dentists coming in between, $336,000 for this one FMX. Treatment plans were all over the board. You had less than a 50% average diagnostic concurrence with this. And this was really good. It was a fascinating case study as to, what are the pain points and how AI can help and assist in solving these problems. Now, on top of that, this is what's sickening too. More and more we see this. We see companies out there, law firms out there that are specifically targeting your patients. Here's a website that I found, and it's like, hey, failure to diagnose claims. Has your dentist? Let me just scroll down a little bit. Common conditions that dentists may fail to diagnose: failure to diagnose gum disease, perio, oral cancer, serious tooth decay. If your dentist failed to detect or to diagnose any of these, reach out to us. Start your claim. We'll go to bat for you. We'll fight for money for it. I mean, it's sickening. But more and more, we see this popping up where, hey, if your dentist missed something, we're going to go to bat for you. We're going to try and go get money for you. Now, this term, okay, selling dentistry, I know that this is almost like fingernails on a chalkboard to some. Like, yeah, selling dentistry, don't like that term. I don't want to be considered, or don't want my patients thinking that I'm selling dentistry. But this term selling, what we really break this down, selling, this is something that happens on a daily basis, right? And if you look at the definition there, persuasion or influence. Really, if we think about how often, and I know that you hear like, oh, well, selling is life, and everyone knows how to sell. Everyone, selling is a part of everyday life. To an extent, it's kind of true. Persuasion or influence, if you really break down the meaning there, and you think about how much this comes up, marriage, man, I tell you, like, sometimes I suck at selling things, and my wife, I'm like, oh, yep, sure, we need that, right? Parenting, my goodness, I showed you the picture of my boys. I've got one that I know is going to be a salesman, can sell me on like anything. Politics, parenting, religion, parenting, court, parenting. My goodness, we sell, we persuade every day in our lives. But yet we see this term, selling dentistry. And we're like, no, we don't want to be a part of that. It's not part of our practice, not part of our philosophy. Okay. But really breaking this down, selling, we're exchanging money for goods or services. Truly services, professional services, medical services. It's what we're in the process. It's what we're in the business of doing every day when we go to work, we go into our practice. So how can we do this a little bit more effectively? Okay. Big difference between buying something and being sold something. Now, I hate being sold something. I hate being sold something. And it was about 2 weeks ago, our dishwasher went out. I'm telling you, Todd, there is nothing more I hate than having to shop for a dishwasher. I don't want to buy a dishwasher, but I know I'm going to go into the store and somebody's going to come over and they're going to start rattling off features and benefits and everything else with this dishwasher. However, buying, I love to buy. I love to buy things. Best example, Apple. Man, I can't even tell you what the latest Apple phone does versus the iPhone 14 or 13. But I know one thing, I'm pretty good at selling my wife on that. I'm like, babe, we need the latest phone. Like, have you seen how many pixels that phone has? Like, we need it. We need it. And I will drive across town, Todd, to go and get the latest phone, even though I don't know exactly the biggest differences, but I love buying new things. And I'm like, oh, babe, what kind of parents are we if we don't have the best camera to capture these moments with our kids, right?
8 days left, right? Until the new phone, they're announcing it. I think on the 15th.
Is that it? I was going to say, it's coming up soon. It's coming up soon. And I'm getting prepared. I'm like getting my sales pitch ready with my wife. But so big difference between buying something and being sold something. And I want to give this example too. Like, this happens to me all the time. I see these coupons. It's like, hey, $19.95 for an oil change. I'm like, oh, that's a good price. Huh. Man, I go in without fail. I'll give anyone $100 here if you can go in and get an oil change for a coupon like this, because here's what happens. You go in and then they come out and they bring the air filter and they dump the air filter out on the table. And they're like, hey, Mike, see how dirty your air filter is? If you don't change this, like, you're going to probably die of cancer in 2 years. And your tires, man, you don't fix those and rotate those, and you got to change this and change that. Otherwise, your car's probably going to blow up and die. And by the end of the day, I'm looking at like $300. I've been sold, right? $300 or something that I'm like, gosh, I don't want to pay this for, for an oil change. But I had a very different experience, and I'm going to relate this back to dentistry and to presenting treatment. Okay. I went to a place, so I'm from Utah, and about 20 minutes away is this car dealership place, Jerry Seiner. Okay. I went there, and I've never seen this before. This was like, you got the timestamp there, June 9th. So I went in for an oil change, and I'm sitting in the waiting room, and I get this text that comes in as I'm sitting in the waiting room. It's like, hey, this is JD from Jerry Signers with a link to your vehicle's video inspection. And I'm like, wait, what? I didn't know they were going to do this. I click on the link. There's a full-on video. Okay, there's a video of like, hey, Mike, I'm just in the back right now. Let me show you a couple things with your car, some things that we found as we tried to balance your tires. This is what we see. This is what we see. This is what we see. And for the first time, I'm like, oh, I get it. Okay, I see why I need this. Oh, wow, I see this with my own eyes. Yep, we need to change that. Oh gosh, I see it. I understand it. Absolutely. And I realized, I'm like, man, how, and this is kind of how my tech nerd brain works. I'm like, how does this relate back to presenting treatment? Right. And it all comes down, buying and selling, it all comes down to trust. I mean, think about that. With Apple, I trust Apple. And maybe I shouldn't, but I trust their devices. I know that they're going to be good devices. I trust it. They come out with something new. I know what I'm getting into. I trust it. So when it comes to your practice, and when it comes to presenting treatment and case acceptance, it all comes down to trust. Not only does it come down to trust, but it comes down to them trusting you as the practitioner, as the doctor, as the healthcare provider. Not only you, but your team and your office. They have to trust your office. They have to trust your team. When they walk in the door, they have to feel like they're in good hands. Did they have a good experience from the time they walked in the door, talk to your office manager, walk back into the chair? Do they trust your hygienist? And the most important part, and this is where it relates back to me as well, is what happened with my wife in October, but do they understand the treatment plan? Did we truly help them understand, or are we pointing to gray spots on the x-ray saying, yeah, we need to fix this one, we need to fix this one, and we need to fix this one? And we use terms and jargon that they don't understand, like caries and calculus and periapical radiolucencies. I mean, patients are like, wait, what? Timeout, right? So it comes down to trust in all of these areas. Now, I like this analogy too, and I'm going to relate this back to dentistry. But when we talk about AI, and I'm going to show you an example here of how AI is being used with X-rays every day. So I'm from Utah. Every now and then in the deserts, I love going backcountry in Utah in the deserts, and there's a few of these that you can still find. So this is like a big, and if we were in a live audience, I'd ask this question: what is this? What is this? Right? It's this like concrete arrow. And I love hearing what people think it might be. Okay. But truly what this is these are, you can still see them in the deserts today. These were used by the airmail pilots back in the day. Okay. So these pilots that would fly by sight, where this was their only tool, this was their only like technology, was a little dial that had their fuel, right? But they would fly by sight. And they were the best pilots in the world that could fly by sight, but they would look down over their plane and they would look to see where these arrows are to navigate around mountains and valleys and to get to their destination. They were flying by sight. Now, technology is a lot different today. With, if I were to ask somebody, hey, Todd, I could hook you up. If you're going to Mexico or Spain next month, tell you what, I'll give you a free flight, and I'm going to hook you up, Todd, with the best pilot in the world, but he's going to fly by sight. I'll tell you, I would not take that flight. And I would much rather get into a plane like this, even with a novice pilot, because This has all the technologies. It helps me feel comfortable and confident. And I want us to think about that as I'm going to start showing you some of these examples of how AI is used. Sometimes I talk to dentists and they're like, you know what? I don't need AI. I don't need help with my diagnosis. I don't need help looking at x-rays. I never miss anything. And that's great. I also talk to other dentists who are like, you know what? I know I miss things. I know that when I come in on a Monday morning and I'm fresh, I've had a great weekend and I'm looking at x-rays, I'm sharp, man. I pick up on things versus 5 o'clock on a Friday. I should have been out the door at noon. I'm still treating patients. I'm burnt out. It's been a long week and I'm trying to get to my son's baseball game. It's like, I know I miss things. Okay. So we think about technologies and the effect and what we want our patients to feel, trust in us, in our practice, and the way that we practice. So with AI, here's an example I want to show. We look at this x-ray and immediately, right, our eyes are like, well, there's this big gray spot there. I know there's caries here. There's a little calculus spur over here. Our eyes might gravitate towards different things. And in the practice with our associates, same thing. It might be like, oh, I see this over here. Now, how Pearl works with AI, instantaneously, as soon as this x-ray is taken, in less than a minute, you now have AI that has pulled this image, examined it, broken it down pixel by pixel, and gives you, because right now, your patients look at it, this is what they see. Patients looking at this x-ray and you're like, yeah, we're gonna proceed with a filling on this tooth right here. You see that gray spot? And the patient's like, what am I looking at? Everything looks gray. Everything looks black and white and gray. Am I looking at teeth? Is this an x-ray of toes or teeth? What is this? AI now can have all of the overlays, all of the detections here, highlighting everything that's going on with that x-ray. Now, I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to give you a little tour of how AI is used with x-rays. So as this pops up, okay, on the screen, with your cursor, as you hover over any of these, it's going to now give you the exact, not only the exact circle of where that decay is, but it's going to tell you how much of that decay is in the enamel, how much of that decay is in the dentin. Okay, it's going to give you the bone level measurements. Anything 2.5 millimeters and above will be showing yellow. And if you want, you can set the parameters to say everything 3.5 millimeters and above, I want that shown in red as the tooth measurements. And those measurements, the bone loss measurements or the bone level measurements, are from the CEJ of the crest. It's not taking the place of perio probing. It's going to show the mesial and distal measurements, okay? But it's also going to show this lighter color when it's detected early stage caries or caries that are contained completely within the enamel, okay? Calculus, areas where calculus is detected. Periapical radiolucencies, okay, needing potential endo. So when we're presenting treatment, now as we're talking to our patients about this, and it's up in the operatory, and we want to kind of educate the patients on, do you see this pink spot here? Well, we can have AI come in and do an overview, kind of an overlay of all the different parts of that tooth. So now we can explain to them where the dentin is and what we mean by, the decay is now encroached into the dentin and why that's a big deal and why we need to treat it today versus maybe 6 months ago when they came in and we were going to watch it. Okay. Now, as soon as we take that x-ray, we now have kind of this 30,000 foot view. And so what you're looking at in the bottom left-hand side, you'll see all of these different color-coded dots. And what those are telling us is, okay, anywhere that I see a pink dot, AI is basically saying, we're predicting that there is caries within this image. Or green, there's calculus. Or blue, there's periapical radiolucency. So now the team and the doctor, the hygienist, can look at this, can kind of scan back and forth as they click into an image. It pulls it up with all of the detections that are on there, okay? And each of these colors represents something different, whether it's bone loss, notable margin, might need a restoration replacement, bone level measurements, widening of the periodontal ligament. So there's a lot of things that AI can help find and detect. And again, it's not diagnosing. It's basically just saying, hey, you should check this area, or there's a high likelihood that there's caries or calculus in this area, okay? Now, I want to give a couple, I'm going to pause there for a second because I do want to just share a couple examples of how this is used and a couple case studies or cases of how AI made an impact in practices in everyday practice. So if there's any questions or comments, I don't think I see any on there, but go ahead and put some questions in there up to this point. If there's anything that's like, hey, I don't understand this or have a question about this. And Todd, I'll just have you stop me if there is a question that pops up, but I'll keep going for time's sake. I want to share with you this example. So this is a practice, or this was a doctor that I know well who utilizes Pearl. He's out of the Chicago area, and he has a new associate. Okay, that's in the practice, and the new associate sends him a text message, and he says, "Hey, doc," I'll leave the names out. But he says, "Hey, doc, the first image that I'm going to send you is from today, and the second is from a year ago. Is this cervical burnout on 13?" Okay, so the first image, okay, that he sends, this one, and this was taken in 22 last year. He says, "Here's the image, okay, on 13. Is this cervical burnout? This one was taken in 21, right?" And he's kind of looking at those two, comparing the two, okay. And then he also says, "Hey, I looked at the CT scan from a year ago." Okay, so he pulls up the CT scan. Now, what's customary in this practice is they take a CBCT versus a traditional FMX, and still, this was the CBCT that was taken a year ago, and still the lesion wasn't caught. It wasn't caught on the 2D or the 3D that was taken in 21. And so looking at this, and he's like, "Okay, is this cervical burnout? Obviously, there's something there." And so the doctor, who had just started using Pearl, says, "Hey, send me the patient's name. I'm going to go into the system. I'm going to pull it up, and I want to pull it up into Pearl, and I want to see what AI is telling me." So goes in and he pulls up the image. Boom! Right away, it's showing in pink caries. Now, some of you may have looked at that and said, "Yeah, of course, we could have seen that," but this was missed. This was missed by that associate who thought it was cervical burnout. And what was interesting, though, is when he pulled up the images from last year, okay, and sees this, he could not only could he see like that it was 87% in the cementum and 13% in the dentin, but looks at that new set of X-rays and also sees that, and there you go, I'm zooming in a little bit here, but also sees additional restorations or additional caries that were missed. So here's another one. Okay, and here's a couple more. Now, this one over here is completely contained in the enamel, but there were two additional restorations or two additional pockets of decay or caries that were missed because they were just looking at that one area. So comparing the two, could now see with an exact definition and breakdown that in 2021, by pulling it up in Pearl and looking at the AI, 75% of the decay was in the cementum. Fast forward to 2022, it had advanced to 87% of the decay that was in the cementum. Okay, so kind of a real life example there that I wanted to share. Sorry, what was that, Todd?
I was going to say, we all know that the tooth is the only part of the human body that doesn't heal itself. It gets worse. Absolutely gets worse. Dr. Kyle had a quick question here. He sent me a text, actually. He says, can we use this with PANs, extraoral bite wings, and PAs and CBCTs?
Great question. So PAs, yes. Panoramics, we are actually finalizing so right now with panoramics, we do pull in the panoramics. And what we're primarily looking for is areas of impaction, okay? So those, we are able to go in and to detect areas of impaction, obviously, but we are improving our models around with the PANs, looking at periapical radiolucencies and caries. Now, those are obviously going to be better found on the bite wings and the PAs, but we do pull the bite wings and PAs. CBCT, that's another question that comes up a lot. We are building those models. We are working on CBCT. It's going to take some time yet. I'm hoping that by the end of next year that will be ready. But as you can imagine, with each CBCT, we're talking about hundreds of images that need to be analyzed. Not only that, but now we're looking at cancerous pathologies and everything else that we have to be aware of. Okay, so CBCTs are coming, but not quite yet.
Awesome.
Okay. Any other questions that maybe popped up while I was talking? Sorry, I know I probably speak too fast.
Nope, I think that's it for right
Okay.
now.
Okay. Perfect. There's one last example I want to show. So this was another example that the team goes in for a morning huddle, and this is a doctor that was out of Minnesota, and he goes in and pulls up the patient's information where it shows, okay, decay on 25, he's got a watch on 24. Okay, patient has two upper denture and lower partial. Brought them all in today, have them cleaned. So they're going through the morning huddle, looking at, okay, decay on 25, watch on 24, and pulls up the images and sees that there we go. There's the area of decay. But when pulled up the Pearl images, was also able to see some things that were also highlighted or popped up that were missed. So there's our area that we knew the patient was coming in for. However, pulling it up into Pearl, we can also see that we've got caries here. We've got periapical radiolucency down there. Okay, and so there was a couple things that were missed. There was decay on 22. There was only decay on 25 and a watch on 24. Now we also have decay on 22, periapical radiolucency down there that we've got to take care of. And so at the end of the day, with the assistance of artificial intelligence, not only was production increased, because now they added on 2 additional restorations and a CBCT, but patient care. The most important part here is increase that patient care and found things that may have been missed before or that were missed before that may have gone another 6 months before we were treating those. Okay. Now
Hey,
there's
Mike,
a question on here.
okay, man.
Yeah.
It says,
Yeah.
how
Go
can
ahead.
dentists effectively communicate the benefits of AI to their patients? Just making sure they're comfortable with the use of it during their treatments.
Oh, absolutely. So I
I
get this
think this
question a
person,
lot.
I
In
know this
fact,
doc really well. I think he has an older patient base, and I'm sure maybe that's why he's thinking that.
yeah, no, that's a really good point. Um, so this became, practices that are utilizing this, their patients were getting so enamored and enthralled with, wow, what is this? What's these pink areas and what's this green? And when we found that when practices are basically saying, hey, in our practice, we utilize state-of-the-art technology, artificial intelligence, that also helps provide kind of a second set of eyes on each of these images, breaking down millions of pixels with each of these x-rays to ensure that we find everything. Now think about that. Explaining that to the patient, that not only is this image, viewed by the dentist and, seeing with his professional diagnoses, what he sees, but it's also backed by technology. And truly, as you think about what this is the power of having literally 1,000 dentist eyes on one x-ray. Because as we built all of these models, these AI detections, starting in 2015, we have the largest database of dental x-rays in the world. We basically started, pulling in thousands and tens of thousands of x-rays after they had been annotated by dentists, by doctors, to start detecting patterns. So when something's popped up, it basically is saying, yeah, you run this by 1,000 dentist eyes, this is kind of what what's popping up or what is detected. So we actually have marketing materials around this too. A lot of practices want to put a little seal, as the patient walks in the front, you can see AI backed radiographs, even on the website saying AI backed radiographs. So it is a big deal. And again, in my case, I am never going to allow my daughters to go and get a mammogram anywhere that does not have artificial intelligence. So it's becoming more and more important. Now, the last thing that I just want to lead off on, and I know we're coming up on time here, is I wanted to just kind of share how artificial intelligence is utilized. We were talking about practice transitions and wanting to scan historical radiographs. So when we bring on a client with artificial intelligence or with Pearl, we actually will pull and scan the last 18 months of all of their X-rays. And what we do is we compile a very comprehensive report showing how, what AI detected that was not presented to the treatment to the patient or not seen on their treatment plan. So here's an example. Okay, here's a practice that has 3 locations. There's one in Palms, one in Brentwood, and one in Culver City, California. And they're all kind of, broken down by the colors. So what you're looking at is on the far left-hand side, AI has scanned the last 18 months of x-rays and found 4,500 restorative candidates, caries, things that might need to be restored, restoration replacements, and then found that as they looked, or as we compared what AI found with what that doctor had in the practice management software, we saw that there's only 2,800 treatment plans that had been presented, okay, that were planned, and only 498 that had ever been restored or completed. So there was an outstanding opportunity of undiagnosed opportunity, I'll say, of over $1 million of just restoration. So we do this for restorations, for endo or periapical radiolucency, for scaling, for restoration replacements. So we provide a very comprehensive report of all of the areas where AI picks something up. Maybe it wasn't in the patient's treatment plan, and we make that, we bring that before the team. So again, one of the things I mentioned earlier is I was early on at Dental Intel, and analytics. I've loved analytics, practice analytics. I've kind of always been fascinated with the data that's in the practice management software and the decisions that we can make, right, to improve our day-to-day practice. Now, Todd, you might agree with me, but morning huddles are pretty important. Bringing the team together,
absolutely,
increasing communication, pretty important in the practice. Now, traditionally, when you do a morning huddle, you're looking at unscheduled treatment. You're looking at what patients are coming in, what do they have? Now, what was mind-blowing for me is now being able to not only view what's unscheduled, but also what is undiagnosed. So now AI has the ability, I want you to think about that for a second. Pearl actually will go in and, like, if you're using Dentrix, we're going to pull a version of the schedule from Dentrix, and we're going to compare that with what AI found. So what you're looking at here, you've got 3 providers. Now you've got the schedule that has 3 different colors. I know you're looking at like, man, what do all these colors mean? There's 3 main colors. The first one is dark blue. Any appointment that's in dark blue, what that's saying is AI detected undiagnosed opportunity. There's something that AI picked up that is not on that patient's treatment plan, okay? Now, any of the patients in gray, these are patients that have never been in the practice before. We don't have any x-rays. And then the teal, these are patients where AI, everything that AI picked up has actually been presented to the patient or been completed, okay? So now our morning huddles can say, okay, team, let's come together. I got 17 patients coming in. 17 of them need x-rays. All of the ones that have a little pink bar, those are due for a full mouth series. All the ones with the little purple bar, those are due for bite wing series. So I now can look at this and say, all right, I've got one for, one perio maintenance, one undiagnosed scaling, 3 endo, 5 implants, 7 restoration replacements. And as I hover over any of these, those patients, the 2 scaling patients, those are going to be highlighted. And then AI almost does an instantaneous chart audit where I can click on it. It's going to show me exactly what the images are, what that patient has as unscheduled, and what they have as undiagnosed. So it allows me to bring the team together and to say, okay, let's make sure that we've got our eyes on the areas of opportunity. Let's check between 19 and 20. It's showing here that we may have missed something last time they were in. So we're increasing not only the standard of care, but the production in day-to-day practice. Now we can also print this out and give it to the team. So now the team kind of has that cheat sheet saying, okay, here's the patients coming in, what they're coming in for, what's unscheduled, and what AI picked up as predicted. Okay. Now I'm going to answer that question about insurance. Insurance companies are utilizing AI. We also generate these, evidence for claims. And with evidence for claims, here's an example where we generate a PDF. So claims that are submitted for SRPs, whatever, we now have these PDFs that have not only the x-ray, has the exact measurements of bone loss, has the areas that's highlighting calculus. So when these are presented or submitted in with the claims, we see a dramatic decrease of claims denials. Now, what we are working on, what's coming very, very soon, is we're working with claims and clearinghouses, claims processing and clearinghouses to expedite that process. And where I believe this will be in the next 3 to 5 months, is there will be a stamp of approval almost on claims that are submitted where it's been ran through by AI. We can turn that claim around in no time compared to sending it in and having to send it back and say, oh, the x-ray is not good enough. Well, we're going to basically be able to flag that x-ray and determine whether or not that x-ray is of quality. So there's still a lot that's coming with AI. And the other big thing too is if you have a hole in the schedule, and I spent a lot of time over at Weave and Solution Reach early on. When you have a hole in the schedule, I talk to office managers that are like, Mike, I don't necessarily want to reactivate every patient in the practice. Right? There are some that I just, I don't want to be bringing in somebody for just a pro fee if I've got like a hole in the schedule. Well, now we can rely on AI to scan through all of our patients that are overdue and prioritize those due to undiagnosed treatment. And those who have the greater, the greatest need for dental care or for treatment, to bring them into the practice. We know we're bringing in $2,500 or $5,000 cases based upon what AI found and that is undiagnosed. So at the end of the day, I'd say this: what kind of practice do we want to be, right? We can be the best pilots in the world, but our patients want to know, is my dental office, is my dentist, are they using state-of-the-art technology? Are they up to speed with the latest and greatest to provide the best care in the practice? So again, my name is Mike. I've got my information on there if you have any questions. Okay. Yeah, I'll kind of pause it here. I know that I do have this QR code, Todd. I'll kind of let you speak through that. Sure. For a survey, but I'll kind of pause here and open it up to any questions anyone might have.
Yeah, first off, Mike, I want to thank you so much. The story with your wife, when I first heard that, I think it was in San Diego, that just really touched me. I mean, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. I think that says a lot about you. I appreciate that. One thing, a company that, Tony Robbins was one of our original founders, and something that in all of his classes and all the trainings I've always heard is, as business owners, you must innovate. The day that you stop innovating, the day you stop growing is the day your business dies. So we've got to constantly be on the cusp of innovation. And I think this is it. And just kind of, you're talking about, like, I saw that one, just a couple of comments I just wanted to make. 2017 they were the one study. Well, I can imagine the difference between 2017 with the one press study to 2023. I mean, the difference there, because I know, like, I just did a business mastery class with Tony Robbins when they were talking about, we had a speaker coming in about AI, and he was just saying that to go from the first cell phone to where it is now, that took like 20 some years. AI is doubling every single day, where it didn't never, I mean, every single day it's doubling. So just the whole ability of AI. So, so I have no doubt that the CBCT, you mentioned end of next year. I think it's definitely see that as a possibility. And that's going to be even a game changer, even more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think those are a couple things. I mean, just little comments for me. You may have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. How the CE credits work? You'll just pick up your phones right now, scan the QR code. It's going to ask you for a password, and then you enter that password. It has a little survey. It won't take you more than a minute or two to fill out. It takes a little bit, give it about a week. Our corporate team in California will then send you your CE credits, your practice management credits for this. And let's see here. I got one or two more questions. Let me see that pulls in. AI robots. There was an article that talked about I don't know exactly where it was, but they were starting to use AI robots. Any insight on that, or do you know anything about that? They're at least
yes. In fact, this is something that's kind of been fascinating to watch. But there are some tests that are being done where not tests that are being done, but they're in development of having AI assist with certain surgeries. obviously. One of them that they're looking at, especially in the dental space, is endo and root canals, being able to take all the information in and precisely, drill down with the accuracy and everything else. So we do see in healthcare, and honestly, for myself, I hope that we see more of it, of computers and robots, so to speak, assisting with some of this stuff. As you look far down the road, I love these conversations because I talk to some technology dental professionals that are like, you know what, it's not too far off where we'll see AI and robots potentially assisting with other day-to-day tasks, as far as cleanings or scalings or prophies, whatever that might be. But I do think that in the near future, what we will see is a continual increase of artificial intelligence with patient communication, with scheduling, with billing, with claims, just truly increasing the efficiency in the practice to free up you and your team to spend and to focus that time on the patient.
One of the things that I remember reading in the article was talking about the biggest advancement in AI robots. It was actually with men's hair transplants, because the follicle is so small where they actually can go in, and you used to have somebody that would have a magnifying glass and pick the follicle and replace it, where it's precision. Like that was just, thought that was just interesting. Just a little tidbit on that. Looks like
Healthcare though, in general though, I think, what I have here on my ring, I've got one of those Aura rings, and it tracks my sleep, it tracks my exercise, my respiratory rates, my, there's so much that's going into healthcare tracking, that where I see this going is basically our healthcare providers pulling in all of that data and utilizing AI to say, well, this is maybe an active person who, based upon all of these criteria, demographics, age, genetics, probably has a disposition for X, Y, and Z.
Absolutely. Dr. John mentioned or asked, has the ADA or the AGD made any comments on this? I found a little article I shot to him about the ADA, but what's your thoughts on that? Or what do you know from the ADA?
Continual interest. Everyone right now is looking at AI and where this is going. I wouldn't make any definitive comments on this, but there's just a lot of interest as to where this can go, how this can be utilized in everyday practice, both ADA, AGD. I think that there's going to be a lot more that we'll see in the AI space, specifically with radiographs and CBCTs in the next year. And I truly believe that it's very believable to think that in the next 3 to 5 years, it will become a standard of care, not just in dentistry, but any other x-rays and imaging.
Absolutely. And looks like there's one more question that was, a couple of these were shot before, and it says, Mike, how do you, this was a little bit early, you kind of answered this, but I'll just make sure it gets brought up here. How do you see AI reshaping the landscape of dentistry in the next 5 years?
Yeah. So some of the other things that maybe I didn't mention. So absolutely, with you think about all of the patient engagement, practice management solutions. Chat GPT is going to change a lot. Okay, so not only with AI with imaging, okay, but you think about AI and Chat GPT and everything else, being able to truly almost help design the perfect schedule based upon your team that's going to be there, bringing in the right patients. And when I say right patients, AI and what we're building in as well is being able to, our dev team's looking at this, but being able to go and to pull not only, who has undiagnosed, but who has undiagnosed, who has patient financing, what's remaining on their insurance. What's the likelihood of those patients that we're going to bring in or schedule to proceed with treatment? So I see a lot, a lot along the ways of practice management with artificial intelligence and Chat GPT. But those are just some of the areas.
Last question I'm going to end. Then you need to get it with your family. You're down in Orlando. Go have some fun.
You're
Last
good.
question. How steep is the learning curve?
Okay, so the learning curve is, we've designed this to be very, very user friendly. So it's designed so that as soon as you take an X-ray, there's nothing you've got to press or anything else. We have, if you're basically logged into Pearl, okay, and as soon as you take that X-ray with, your Dexis or Sodexis, whatever imaging software you've got, our software is designed to pull any new X-rays, run them through our AI software and servers, and basically put it up in the cloud on the Pearl platform. So as soon as you take that X-ray, instantaneously, 30 seconds or so, you see that pop up with all the AI findings. Click into it, navigate through that. Very easy to use. We have two different offerings, two different platforms. Just the images, to look at real-time images, that's called Second Opinion. We have a kind of a premium package. It's called Practice Intelligence. Okay, Practice Intelligence, it includes the imaging, the real-time detections with your X-rays, but that's where it's also going to be syncing that and comparing that with your practice management software, offering you the AI-driven schedules and AI call sheets, and your undiagnosed reports and everything else. So very easy learning curve, I would say. All of our trainers are all previous dental professionals. They've all worked in a practice, so they know how to, walk the talk.
Absolutely. All right, Mike. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for attending. I greatly appreciate it. And anybody has any questions, Mike's information was there. I'll shoot a follow-up email thanking you guys. I'll include Mike's information if you want to get with him. But I truly thank you. My email is toddking@fortunemgmt.com. Thank you, Mike. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.